Weather and life both change quickly. Do you have a farm estate plan? You need to learn the best option to help your family avoid or minimize federal estate taxes and other costs.
I'm Brad Swenson, President of Swenson Investments and Commodities. We work confidentially with farmers, ranchers, and advisors to help develop the best farm estate plan.
During our Farm Basics time today, we wanted to discuss what's the difference between a fixed year and a flex year. So what is that, Darren? It's in corn.
Depending on where you're farming and what type of soil you have and what planting population you're going to use, knowing if you have a fixed year or a flex year is very important. So let me explain the difference. With a fixed year, really no matter what happens out in that field, that corn plant is going to try to put so many kernels around the ear and so many kernels long every time. Now if you have a flex year, what happens is, let's say you have plenty of plant food out there, plenty of moisture, plenty of sunlight, everything is great, well that ear can expand. You know, instead of putting 14 kernels around, maybe it can flex in girth and go out to 20 kernels around. Well, if you have a 50 kernel long ear and you go from 14 to 20, well that goes from 700 potential kernels to 1,000 potential kernels. Well that's great if you have a hybrid that can flex like that if you get the right conditions. Now the other way the ears can flex is they can flex in length. Sometimes they hold that girth and say, you know what, we always produce 16 kernel around ears, but instead of 35 long, we're going to go up to 45 long because conditions are just right. Well, that's just part of the basic genetics of that hybrid that it can do that. So some hybrids can flex for girth, some can flex for length, and some can actually flex both ways versus hybrids that can't flex at all. We call those fixed ear hybrids. Now you can certainly be successful with both, but the strategies are a little bit different.
Okay, so let's talk about being successful with both. When would you use a flex and when would you use the fixed?
All right, let's just say that Brian likes to put 40,000 plants per acre.
Which would be a lot.
That's a pretty high plant population. For Brian, he can really go either way. He could use a flex ear or he could use a fixed ear. But for many times, the guys that want to use this great hybrid, but it's a fixed ear, you have to plant that at a little higher population to be successful. Now, let's move west into South Dakota. As you move west, you get into lower rainfall areas and they're dry land production. And so the guys say, man, I can only plant 20,000 population, otherwise I have problems. If I have too many plants out there, there won't be enough food to feed them, and I may have barren stalks where that corn plant doesn't even put an ear on because there's too much competition for the water and nutrients. In those cases, we really like to see flexed ear hybrids. That way, if we're in a low population, all of a sudden if we do get good growing conditions, that ear can flex. And like we talked about, going from the 14 around to the 20 around at 50 kernels long, well that's 300 more possible kernels per ear. If you get great growing conditions, awesome. You could go way up to that. Instead of getting 70 bushel corn, you may get 100 bushel corn with the same hybrid. Now if you had a fixed ear, you wouldn't be able to do that.
I guess the last thing I wanted to mention about this is the plant makes its determination relatively early in the year. So even when the plant is relatively small, it decides then, hey, do I have enough moisture? Do I have enough nutrients? Are my overall growing conditions good? If so, then that flex ear really comes in handy and it'll flex and grow just a little bit larger with the ear. It's not going to happen after tasseling time. It's not going to happen in August or September or anything like that. This is an early season kind of deal, but there is a major difference between flex and fixed, and we just wanted to make sure you understood the difference.
Well, those flex ear hybrids are really opportunistic, kind of like our Weed of the Week. If you give it an opening, it's sure to spread. We'll explain later in the show.